Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining. We're going to give folks just a couple of minutes to get in here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining. My name is Sam Klewicki, and I'm the Communications and Marketing Manager for WACARES. I'd like to go around really quick and introduce you to um, your panelists for today. Kathy?
Hi, I am Kathy McCall. I am the Advocacy Director for AARP here in Washington State. AARP has about 970,000 or 870,000 members in the state, and we are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization.
Thank you. Matt?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Santelli. I work as the lead community education and outreach specialist here at the Pierce County Aging and Disabilities Resource Program. We are your local area agency on aging, serving seniors and disabled adults here in Pierce County. And my talk will center a lot on what your local area agency on aging can do for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Johnny?
Hello, everyone. My name is Johnny Matson, and I am the Rental Assistance Unit Manager within the Office of Housing and Employment at Home and Community Services, which is DSHS. We have a variety of housing resources that I'll be talking about later that are available to our long-term care clients, and I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks. We're going to start with some remarks from our panel members, and then we'll share an overview of the WACARES Fund, and then we'll have an opportunity for audience Q&A at the end. You're welcome to go ahead and enter any questions that you may have using the Q&A button as they come up, and our panel and our customer care team will answer them later in the webinar. The slides for this webinar are already available on our website, and the recording will be available later today. Let's start with Sebastian, and he's going to give you an overview of long-term care and caregiving.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. So my name is Sebastian. I'm the Outreach and Language Access Lead for the WACARES Fund. So thank you all for joining us today. And like Sam mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and start off with defining and getting a general sense of what long-term care is and caregiving before we jump into our panelist remarks. So long-term care, how can we define that generally speaking, right? So help with activities of daily living that can include things like bathing, eating, dressing, preparing meals, grocery shopping, and many more. But it does not include things like medical care. So those are things like doctor's visits and treatment for medical conditions. And long-term care covers a broad spectrum of needs and circumstances, including for younger people who have also been unexpectedly injured or maybe become disabled or ill. And we might not realize what a broad range of services can be included when we're talking about long-term care. So we might often think of it as care in a residential setting, like a nursing home or assisted living, but it can also include care provided in our own homes. And really, most people with long-term care needs can stay in their own homes with the right types of supports. It's also very common for family caregivers to not realize that they are, in fact, a caregiver. So a caregiver can be defined generally as a person who tends to the needs or concerns of a person with short or long-term limitations due to illness, injury, or disability. So for example, you might go to your mom's house a couple times a week to cook meals, maybe drive her to appointments and make sure she's taking her medications, all of which are common care activities. And the majority of this type of care is provided on an informal basis, which means that's care that's unpaid, and generally from a family member, a friend, right, or could be a neighbor as well. So with that general understanding of long-term care and caregiving, we're going to go ahead and pass it over to our panelists and learn more about the programs that they work for and how seniors are impacted by the housing crisis. So pass it on to Kathy.
So again, thank you for having AARP on this important conversation. And I also wanted to share that I am a commissioner on the Long-Term Care Trust Commission, which works on WA Cares. I've also been working on the WA Cares program for about 10 years. And the real goal of the program is helping older adults age with purpose and dignity. Next slide. So one of the challenges that we're facing as a nation and here in Washington State is that by the year 2030, so only 5 years from now, more people will be over the age of 65 than under 18. That means that our whole entire system within this country needs to change and needs to be addressed. And that includes housing. Next slide. So when we talk about this demographic shift, there's a lot of positive things. People are getting older, they're living longer, they're healthier, and they have a greater quality of life. The challenge is that we know that there's also a huge quiet crisis around aging into poverty and the increase in homelessness. In fact, the fastest growing segment of the homeless population are people in their 60s. This is just not acceptable. One of the biggest issues is the cost of housing. These are images of people here in Washington State. And so the issue around homelessness and the challenge of finding affordable, accessible housing for people of all ages is very much a top concern for AARP. Next slide. This is just a what we call kind of a heat map to show the shifting demographic and the aging of our country across the nation. Next page. So again, AARP, we do a lot of research. We have an incredible public policy institute that looks at these issues on an ongoing basis. And we know that people want to stay in their own community, in their own homes. In fact, 76%, that number is actually ticked up a bit. We're getting ready to release another version of this report, and it's also in excess of 80%. We also know that there's a widening gap between the median household income and median home prices. Median home prices are increasing and rents are increasing faster than median household income. And when I talk about incomes, I'm talking about the challenges, especially for older adults, because they are on fixed incomes. They might rely on Social Security, which in Washington State is about an average of $1,800 a month. And they rely on maybe a small pension or retirement savings. But we know that people have not saved adequately for retirement, and they have not planned for long-term care. So it makes it a real challenge when there's also a lack of affordable and accessible housing choices. Next slide. So again, I will be emphasizing this point is people want to age in place, meaning they want to age in the communities with their neighbors, their family, their friends, their churches, the schools, dentists, doctors, everything that they have come to know and feel as trusted partners, trusted friends, trusted family members. Yet they find it really challenging to stay in their own home. And when we ask them, they say it's actually going to be a challenge for them to stay in this home. So what can we do collectively? Because we know it's what people want, but we know that there are challenges. Next slide. So AARP has done, again, research. We have an initiative called Livable Communities, and all of these resources are available online. And at the end of this presentation, the Walk Cares team at DSHS said that they would make these slide decks available. And I listed all of these resources so that you can access these via the internet. So there's livability indexes, and you can put in your address, your city, your town, and it will look at things around housing affordability, walkability, access to services, and you can look at your own community. This information helps us guide our overall policy and program direction at AARP that we provide to communities, to individuals, but also more importantly, to policymakers and to the development community, to the people who are building housing, to city, county zoners, state planning offices, etc. Next slide. So one of the first things that came out of the recommendation was a focus on the development of ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. These are a simple way. These are also images from Seattle, because we haven't had a chance to see all the progress that's been made after we passed a piece of legislation to make ADUs legal throughout the state. So ADUs are important because they have an ability to offer an older adult a place to live if they can no longer live in their primary residence, a place for a family member to live that maybe is going to be providing care to that individual, to that family member, or for them to hire a caregiver. And so in exchange for paying for their caregiving, they could actually provide them rent and a place to live. It also gives the older adult an opportunity to use the rental of that unit if they decide it's not for caregiving, for rental income. Next slide. So the ADU, along with missing middle, are ways to address modest density. And when we say modest density, we want to make sure that we are emphasizing the importance of maintaining the quality of life and the characteristics of our communities here in Washington State. Missing middle was also a piece of legislation the Washington State Legislature passed, again, to give older adults, in addition to everyone of all ages, more opportunities and access to a variety of housing options that are close to transit, but allow people to stay in their communities. So if they want to downsize a house, one of the biggest complaints I hear is older adults want to potentially move, but there is not an affordable option for them to remain in their community. Next slide. So additionally, AARP has also been working with preserving manufactured and mobile home communities. This is just in Snohomish County, just as one example. There are about 110 to 140 communities in Snohomish County. Snohomish is just north of King County, here on the western side of Washington State. And a lot of these communities, the residents are people that are 55 plus. The challenge is that they oftentimes sit on very expensive property, and they are prone to being viewed as an asset by land developers because they are in close proximity to transit, to commercial, retail, additional, beautiful communities. We want to make sure that we can protect and preserve these manufactured and mobile home communities. And we worked on new legislation a few years back. And again, I can give out additional bill numbers if that would be of interest to people. But it's basically to give the residents the ability to potentially purchase their own community and prevent a private equity investor from coming in and actually buying and then dislocating the residents, or raising the rent so high that it's not affordable for them to live there anymore. Next slide. Another option that we find as a very viable option for housing is a concept that we are starting to work on. But again, there's some examples, again, from Snohomish County, which is this idea of senior housing plus services. We know that there are many apartment type complexes and or communities that are predominantly occupied by older adults. There are models of a program that we're calling Housing Plus Services, for example, in Vermont, that rely on local community partners that come to the seniors in the apartments to do blood pressure checks, glucose screenings. They check and make sure that they have regular food delivered, that they're eating healthy, nutritious fruits and vegetables and protein, that they have access to education, activities, exercise. And what they have found in Vermont is that providing just some of those minimal amounts of services, that they're really reducing the number of emergency room visits. They're also reducing chronic diseases, and they're lowering Medicare and Medicaid costs, and they're also helping with falls prevention. So it's something that AARP is wanting to work with the state to really look at, to see if we could actually bolster and strengthen this as a real cost savings way, and a way to support our older adults so that they can remain again in the apartment and the community that they have built within a apartment complex or a housing development. Next slide. The last model I wanted to talk about was co-living. Well, there's one other model, but the other, it's very similar. So the co-living model is also known as the village model. And this is, again, I'm picking on Snohomish County, not picking on them, highlighting all the great things that Snohomish County are doing. But this is where you have micro apartments or with shared living spaces. So imagine having a small apartment, maybe 500 square feet. It has a mini little kitchen. You have a bedroom. You have maybe a small little living area, but you have a huge additional kitchen that's a shared space. You have a movie area to watch a movie. And what we have found is that this co-living model, before we actually talked about it and described it as such, has been something that developers have been creating, but they've been developing it for the young tech sector workers. So the 20-year-olds that are coming to work for Amazon and Microsoft, and in some of our other kind of tech hubs in the Vancouver, Spokane area. But what they found was, guess who's moving into those? Older adults. Older adults are finding this as a viable place to live, to build community, to have an affordable place to live, and to be able to also develop community in some of those shared spaces. So we're really wanting to encourage this shift and rethinking of how we actually live. Next slide. And nobody does it better than the Golden Girls. Home sharing is also something that we want to continue to look at. But again, there's challenges when it comes to home sharing, and what can we do to help support older adults who want to explore home sharing? There was a program down in Southern California that I discovered called Home Share, and they help with the background screening and background checks to make sure that there's going to be, an ability for those individuals to live together and be compatible. Also, that there's financial assistance for taxes and or utilities, because you have increased rates if you have a larger number of people living in potentially one house. Next slide. One of the things that also drives a lot of our discussions is making sure we have universal design. Universal design is something that developers and builders really want to start looking at and thinking about. Because again, as we talked about the shift and the aging of the demographic, we want to make sure that we have wider hallways, lower counters, levers, not knobs, and that we look at ways to really expand the lifespan that an individual can live in a particular home. Next slide. AARP has actually been working with Lowe's, the home improvement store, to give you a whole bunch of tips on how to look at your home today, and help you think about it in the future and what kinds of improvements could be made. There's lots of resources. Again, Lowe's has a program called Livable Homes, and they offer a lot of solutions. I looked online just to make sure that this is still operating. They have information on their website. They also, in some cases, some of the Lowe's stores offer kind of in-person seminars at their stores. And so I'd encourage you to take a look at Lowe's and see if one in your area potentially is offering these types of trainings. Next slide. So again, the population is aging. We need to look at ways to improve the accessibility, affordability, but basically we need to increase the supply of housing. We also need to remove the barriers to housing. A lot of older adults are very frustrated because of property taxes. Property taxes become a huge burden on older adults. AARP has been working to increase the eligibility, increase the income eligibility standard for the senior property tax exemption. I would encourage all of you that are listening that you go on and go onto your assessor's website or go onto the Department of Revenue's website and look for the senior property tax exemption. It's not a 100% exemption, but it's a significant savings. The program is underutilized in our state. And we tried to make it a little bit easier from an application process, but I would encourage you all to explore that. And again, everyone needs to be engaged in housing solutions. AARP, we think of ourselves as a connector, and we hope to connect government leaders, community organization, builders, and consumers as we look at how we create housing options for older adults. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Matt, you're up next. As a reminder, if anybody has any questions, you can add them into the chat in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen.
Great, thank you, Samantha. I'm going to talk a little bit about different community resources that are available for senior housing, really focusing what area agencies on aging do. Again, I'm Matt Santelli, and I work at the Pierce County Aging and Disabilities Resources Program, which is our local area agency on aging here in Pierce County. There's my contact information there, but at the conclusion of the talk, there'll be a resource slide that will have you some links where you can find who your local area agency on aging is. They brand their names differently depending upon how they want to market themselves. And so we've branded as Pierce County Aging and Disability Resource Services or Resource Center. Next slide. I always give a disclaimer whenever I give this talk because housing situations really do vary, especially across counties and across different parts of the state, nationwide as well. You saw an example of some different ones that Kathy presented, some new innovative housing solutions and situations. So it's really a discussion we want you to have with your family members, what works best for you in terms of discussing long-term what your housing situation looks like as you get older. how to prepare for any changes in your health and any decision-making powers that you might have to grant to family members and things like that as you get older. So we encourage you to have that family discussion about housing and what's going to be the best place for you to be as you get older. Next. So the topics we'll talk about what current housing situations look like a little bit here in Pierce County for seniors and disabled adults. And again, Kathy touched on a lot of innovative stuff that's happening in different housing models and possible solutions. And then we'll really focus on what area agencies on aging can do to promote your health in the situation where you're currently living, the safety of the situation where you're currently residing, the financial stability to hopefully maintain your ability to live there as long as possible, how all of those things kind of fold under the notion of what we call options counseling among different area agencies on aging. We'll focus a little bit on some challenges facing residents of our mobile home communities. Those are some unique challenges that folks are facing. And then the final slide will be just a resource page for more information and assistance. Next. So in Pierce County, similar to what Kathy talked about in her presentation, we see the whole gamut of where seniors are living. Many of them, of course, live in their single-family homes, some in duplexes or apartment living where they're renting. Some are homeowners. Some have chosen to move to senior apartment living, where it's a segregated building for 55 and over or 62 and over only. We have many that are renting rooms, and we'll talk a little bit about home sharing situations and programs that we offer here in Pierce County for that. We have a lot of different seniors that have decided to move to retirement center living, where they have an apartment, but they have a shared meal location in the building and some housekeeping services. And then it jumps to the more service-oriented situations, such as assisted living activities of daily living. Some of them might have need for secure memory care in that assisted living building. Adult family homes, where the care becomes a little bit more significant for a lot of physical infirmities and necessities, where staff needs to help the person a lot more. And then skilled nursing facilities, which are basically medical facilities for folks that have a lot of significant, both acute and chronic medical conditions. One thing that we would love to see more of, and it's happening slowly here in Pierce County to serve our older adult population and our fixed income disabled adult population as well, would be more income-based rental units in buildings. Those are going up slowly around the county, and many of them are set-asides for different units in buildings that are mostly market rate units, but have some set-asides in the buildings for income-based. And basically, those income-based units are always affordable because typically the person's paying 30% of their monthly income as their share of the rent. And so in those buildings, there's never an opportunity for the person to kind of be priced out of their apartment because their income is always the basis for their rent amount. So we'd love to see more of those. The ones that we do have in Pierce County often have significant waiting lists, but there are more coming online. And long-term, Pierce County government, and we're working with them through our human services umbrella, we're working on alternative housing options to get people out of those homeless situations into shelter living. Oftentimes it might be home sharing. We have a few different tiny home site villages around the county. We've even got a safe parking site here in the county for folks who are living out of cars, trucks, or SUVs, or even RVs. Kathy mentioned accessory dwelling units. There's a whole county high density plan for more housing and more opportunities for housing, and what used to be a lot that might be limited to single family. Now we can build a duplex there. We can put an accessory dwelling unit there for family members. And out in the Parkland Spanaway area of Pierce County, that's kind of the southern reach of the county, they're building a whole sprawling micro home village that broke ground last year. That's going to house 200 or 300 previously homeless folks to get them into a transitional setting where they'll be supporting themselves in that community and then hopefully moving them from there to longer term housing situations. Next slide. There it is. Great, thanks. So how do we promote things like health in a current setting that a person has? Because our focus at Pierce County Aging Disability Resources, again, that's the name of our area agency on aging, is all about aging in place, like Kathy mentioned, programs and services to make that happen. And our philosophy is providing those program services and benefits to older adults in our communities, some younger disabled adults as well, keeping them healthy, safe, and financially stable in that familiar housing situation. Because again, most clients do choose to age in place. So we're always thinking when a client approaches us with some challenges that they're facing, where they are right now, what are things that we can do to preserve that housing situation for them? So one thing we always focus on is, do they need caregivers in the home? A lot of folks have a situation where they're declining physically, or they might have an onset of dementia, and they need someone to come in professionally and work with them for long-term care in the home. We have a couple of programs for that. Our bigger program is our COPES program, which is Community Options for Program Entry System. Our others is our TSOA program, which is Tailored Support for Older Adults. These programs are Medicaid funded, but have much higher income and assets limits in some situations than typical Medicaid was. So we're always encouraging folks in their localities to look into these possibilities for caregiver support at home. We also have an alternative program known as our Family Caregiver Support Program. Many husbands and wives are on this program. It's basically a relief and support program for that family caregiver who's taking care of someone in the home. More generous income eligibility than the Medicaid programs, and it has no asset test on it as all. And even if you don't meet the minimum requirement for zero cost, it works on a sliding scale above that. So again, I think we have a couple hundred husband and wives and partners on that program, giving relief to that caregiver to support their ability to live at home as long as possible. We also have a health homes program. This is something of a guidance program for at-risk seniors to maximize their Medicare benefits and see if they're eligible for Medicaid, to maintain a higher level of wellness for them at home, and working with them to kind of maximize their medical benefits, understanding their care plans as recommended by their doctors and specialists, and trying to keep them stable in a higher level of health at home. And then if you were to call our Disability Resource Center, 253-798-4600, you'd get a lot of information about these and other programs, including warm handoff to referrals to our general team that might come and do a home visit with you. We get about 1,000 calls a month on that line. We're going to get more this month because the Farmers Market Voucher program is starting in May. But even so, in most months, if you were to call us, we were going to pick up that call with a live person in about 60 seconds. And we're very proud that callers don't take much time spent on hold. Next slide, please. So how about safety? We mentioned health, safety, and financial stability. A lot of when we think about safety, it's what equipment needs to be put in the home, what information needs to be established in the home as well. So one thing we think about is bath benches, shower chairs, canes, walkers, incontinence supplies. We have a lot of those we can offer for free for folks under some of our caregiver programs. Plus, we're fortunate to have some very robust secondhand medical equipment providers where they sanitize donated equipment, fix it up, make sure it's safe. We have the donor closet being one, and Lifting Spirits with Helping Hands being another. So we're thrilled we have those providers here that are offering that service. We also have different programs to establish things like grab bars for safety around toilets, showers, staircases, ramps for entryways, front door, back door. We can typically get folks some funding to get a personal emergency response system with a fall detection attached to it. Sometimes it also works as a communication responder. This is the device you wear as a bracelet or necklace or on your belt for the I've fallen and I can't get up situations. We also widely distribute what are known as files of life. This is a packet of medical information you fill out, listing your illness, injuries, allergies, contact people. You put it in a pouch. It has a magnetic strip on the back. You hang that on your fridge, and first responders there know to look that potentially could save your life in an emergency situation. We can also set people up with free home delivered meals if they're homebound and over age 60 and not currently driving. And then a lot of the work we do is just guidance. How do you get approved for Medicaid? What programs are available for caregiver services? What kind of decision-making documents do you need to set up, like powers of attorney and living wills? We also have an extensive fall prevention program. Falling at home is probably the #1 reason a person's going to end up in an emergency situation. And that's why we do have things like the personal emergency response systems to avoid falling, or at least to have someone alert if there's falling. We do a lot of teaching about fall prevention, home safety, personal safety to avoid falling. And then we have a telephone reassurance program, again, for seniors living alone. They want to stay there. They don't have much contact, much support system. We call them a couple of times a week just to see how they're doing. If there's anything that seems amiss, we'll have one of our staff go out, meet with them, go over all the possibilities to extend their ability to live at home. Next slide. And then finally, of the three elements, financial stability. How do we connect clients to programs that expand their income and reduce their household expenses? We can't add to their income. We can't increase their Social Security or pension. We'd love to, but we can't. But we can expand that income and reduce household expenses by things like adding basic food benefits to them. The old food stamps are now an electronic benefits card. Usually folks that are on basic income there could get anywhere from $25 to $225 on that card to spend every month on food. We can set them up with energy assistance, discounts, and grants, hook them up with a local food bank. We're starting our market voucher program for seniors this month. They get an $80 debit card if they're income eligible to purchase fresh fruit and produce at local markets. We have, I think, upwards of 20 senior meal lunch sites around the county, including some that are culturally specific for Vietnamese, Cambodian, Korean. We have an upgrading home heating and cooling replacement program where we can upgrade old oil systems, old baseboard heating systems, gas furnaces, and things to fully electric, high efficiency heat pump systems. We do a lot of home weatherization, again, to insulate and duct seal that home for energy efficiency. We do a lot of outreach on getting people on Medicare savings programs, where that B premium coming out of your check can get paid if you're income eligible for extra help on prescription costs. Maximizing all the preventive care services available under Medicare. Kathy mentioned that property tax exemption. We've added a whole road show where we go in different parts of the county and promote senior and disabled property tax exemption. There's free transportations with services we can get up, set up for folks, and many, many more programs available. Next. So everything I just talked about really falls under this category of options counseling. What are all the possibilities within your situation as a senior living at home where we can think about things where we can fund programs and services, attach you to funding sources, whether it's through your own long-term care insurance, Medicaid, reverse mortgage, veterans benefit, all those different caregiver services in the home, Medicaid and non-Medicaid programs. The WA Cares Fund is going to be one of those programs for those of you who might still be actively working when eligibility comes online here in the next few years, if you're newly disabled or injured or ill. We do all kinds of long-term care planning for clients and families if they need to make that jump from home into a care facility. We can work with that. We actually are fortunate right now. We do have some Medicaid facilities that are coming online in Pierce County where people can actually take their Medicaid funding through the front door and get help into that community and move in. A lot of times we've been stuck where the person has to private pay for a year, sometimes 2 years before they can come in on Medicaid, but we do have some front door Medicaid program facilities available now. And again, that WA Cares Fund benefit will be available in the future, that $36,500, which will be part of our options counseling program. Next. Residents of mobile home communities, I just want to touch on this. There is some support for those folks. Unfortunately, the last several years, we've seen rising property values in Pierce County, just like statewide, nationwide. With that goes space rent increases. We've seen folks double, sometimes triple the space rents they're required to pay in those mobile home communities. We kind of keep track of where the sales are happening. Each year, there's more mobile home community properties that are being sold to developers. 3 properties statewide last year were sold to developers. There are programs for mobile home relocation assistance if a property is being sold and a person's told they have to move. In some circumstances, though, the state has worked with those residents to actually band together and purchase those mobile home communities so they can continue to live there. All of that information, relocation assistance, and that purchase program is available at those email sites I sent. I have on the screen there the phone numbers and the website as well. Next. And finally, here's the resources, things I talked about. You can find your statewide or nationwide area agency on aging at that web address. You can find all kinds of legal guidance at the Washington Law Help web address. Call us if you're residing in Pierce County or visit our website. And the things I talked about, home sharing in Pierce County, that's done through Associated Ministries. Hopefully other AAAs have something similar where a person who's looking for housing or wanting to share housing can work with them on setting up a roommate. We also have a coordinated entry program for housing for folks that are looking for available, affordable apartments. The medical equipment providers there are listed: Donor Closet and Lifting Spirits, and information on those mobile home community resources as well. So thanks for listening. I hope you can find these programs and services in your own agency, area agency on aging, where you live as well. Sometimes it might be county-based, it might be a consortium of counties, but you can find that information at those web addresses I listed. Thanks so much, and thanks for having me talk today.
Thank you so much. Johnny?
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew and Kathy. That's so much really great information. I'm going to talk more specifically about some housing resources that are available through the Home and Community Living Administration. And I need to start off by apologizing that as of today, May 1st, ALSA, the Aging and Long-Term Support Administration, has been renamed to the Home and Community Living Administration. So you'll see ALSA peppered throughout my 3 slides, but I'll be referring to it as Home and Community Living. So our resources essentially are available to people who have been determined eligible for long-term care or long-term supports and services and supports through the Home and Community Living Administration. We have multiple ones that I'll kind of go through here and talk a little bit about what they offer and what the eligibility criteria is. And essentially the access point for these services are through a person's long-term care case manager, whether that be through Home and Community Services or through a AAA agency. First, we have what we call the Home and Community Living Bridge Subsidy. And essentially, this is a monthly rent subsidy that gets paid directly to housing providers that assist our clients with being able to afford living in the community in order to receive in-home services. We use this subsidy to transition people who are in skilled nursing facilities into the community, into their own apartment. Eligibility for this is, again, being financially and functionally eligible for long-term services and supports, and really just being over the age of 18. We do refer to this as an interim subsidy, meaning it's not considered permanent, but it's also not time limited. Next, we have our 811 project-based voucher. This is actually a permanent voucher, a federal voucher that's attached to a permanent affordable housing unit. So we at DSHS here, we partner with the Washington State Department of Commerce to make referrals for these units. And we coordinate services for the residents through our long-term services and supports. This subsidy is attached to the unit, so unfortunately one could not move with it, but it is permanent housing, meaning you can live there for as long as you would want to. Again, a person needs to be eligible for our services in order to be referred, and a person does need to be between the ages of 18 and 61 to lease up here. So there is an age restriction on this. However, a person can live beyond the age of 61 in the unit. That's just at referral. A little bit different eligibility criteria here for income. This program asks that folks be at 30% or below of their area median income. Next, a little bit similar is what we refer to as a non-elderly disabled voucher. And again, these are federal permanent affordable housing vouchers that people use to rent up market rate units. Again, these are used to either transition a person out of a skilled nursing facility or one of our state hospitals, or the mainstream vouchers can also be used to serve people who are at risk of institutionalization or experiencing homelessness. Again, there is this age criteria of these of 18 to 61, but again, a person can age in place while receiving one of these vouchers. There is an extra layer of HUD eligibility criteria, and the income is at 50% at or below the area mean income. I do want to say that the Home and Community Living Bridge Subsidy and the 811 project-based voucher, both are expanding. So we were able to be in the final budget that the governor has before him to sign for the bridge subsidy with additional subsidies. And then we also have about 130 new 811 project-based voucher units that we anticipate coming online over the next few years. Next slide. A few other services that aren't necessarily voucher or subsidy related for our long-term care clients are the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So this is essentially a one-time assistance that can be made directly to a landlord on behalf of a person who's enrolled in our services who is facing an eviction due to non-payment of rent. So again, if they're at risk of eviction for, non-payment of rent from their independent living situation, we are able to help, pay basically the back rent due in order to keep the person in their current living situation, and again, prevent homelessness or prevent a reinstitutionalization. Another program is called MIST, that is Motel Interim Stay for Transition. And again, we refer to this as interim housing. It's up to 6 months that we pay for a person to be in a hotel so that they have a safe place to stay while searching for housing or while wanting to get, other important services in place. Again, this can be, we also have an expansion of this. So this really is available to folks who are, that have a voucher that they're needing to utilize, or who are looking for other types of housing or assisted living or some other permanent situation and need that interim place to stay. And then Global Leasing is a newer program for us. And that is a partnership we have with a community organization across the state, and where we lease up clients who may be facing, higher housing barriers, essentially. Commonly, a program like this has been referred to master leasing, but essentially we're using long-term services and supports, housing resource, and a risk mitigation fund to basically, get landlords to work with us in order to face clients who do have, the higher housing barriers. Again, access to these programs is through a person's either AAA or Home and Community Services case manager. They will have the information that a client may need, or have the way to also make the referral. Next slide, please. We also have a few supportive housing services available. One is referred to as GOSH, or the Governor's Opportunity for Supportive Housing. And again, that's a supportive housing service that's paired with a subsidy, a state subsidy, for an individual who is discharging or diverting from one of our 2 state hospitals and who wish to live independently. The eligibility criteria is there as listed. And again, eligibility for home and community living services is the criteria for this service. We also have foundational community supports, referred to as FCS supportive housing, and that's funded under the 1115 Medicaid Transformation Waiver Project, or MTP. And FCS provides targeted supportive housing and supported employment benefits for people who are eligible. And again, we partner with the Healthcare Authority to be able to provide this service to our home and community living clients. And there is a bit of eligibility criteria to that. They do need to meet one of the health criteria, a risk factor, essentially, which are listed out here on this sheet. And again, Medicaid eligibility is what is needed in order to access this program. So yes, we have a lot of housing resources available for our home and community living clients, and our OHAY team, our Office of Housing and Employment, works to, increase the capacity for the current programs that we do have, and also doing outreach to expand the services that we have overall. Thank you.
Thanks. Now we're going to go to Sebastian for a really quick overview of the Walk Cares program.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you to the panelists for all that great information and resources. So yeah, we're going to jump into an overview of the Walk Cares Fund and start with talking about how it works. So Walk Cares is a universal long-term care program in the state of Washington. It's an earned benefit, which means that you contribute for a certain number of years to qualify for the benefit. And it's entirely self-funded from worker contributions. So those contributions go into a dedicated trust fund that is used only for this program. So the contributions, as you can see there on the screen, are 0.58% of every paycheck goes to Walk Cares. So we can see what that looks like for a typical worker who makes just over $50,000 there. They would contribute $291 each year, or what comes out to $24 a month. And you only contribute while you're working. So if you retire or if you become unemployed, contributions stop. Also, everyone is covered at the same rate, regardless of any pre-existing conditions. And then when it does come time to claim your benefits, there are no copays, no deductibles, and you never need to file a claim or pay up front for services. Instead, we'll be connecting you with the contracted providers for the services that you want and pay those providers directly. So contributions to the program began in July of 2023. And benefits will become available in July of next year, 2026. So I'm going to be pretty brief on this slide. These are just sort of scenarios of what contributions can look like over the course of someone's potential career. So just to focus in, again, as an example, in that middle column there in green, we see, again, someone, typical worker in the state of Washington who makes just about $50,000 a year annually. Over the course of 30 years, right, we see that their total contribution amount comes out to $8,700. And the total benefit amount for Walk Cares is $36,500, which is adjusted to inflation each year. So next we're going to talk about qualifying for the benefit. So everyone who is contributing to Walk Cares Fund more than 500 hours per year is earning benefits, and that includes part-time and temporary workers. So by contributing for a certain number of years, you can earn access to that full benefit amount of $36,500. So these are the contribution pathways, and we're going to talk about what those requirements are for each pathway. So the first one on the left there is the lifetime access, and this is the pathway that we expect that the majority of Washington workers will use to qualify for the benefit. So for this pathway, workers must contribute for 10 years without a break of 5 or more consecutive years. And this pathway will earn you access to that full benefit amount, again, $36,500 adjusted for inflation. The middle column there is the sort of early access pathway that was mentioned earlier as well. So this is for workers who have not yet earned the lifetime access, but maybe have a care need while working or soon after leaving work. So for this pathway, you need to have contributed for at least 3 of the past 6 years at the time that you apply for benefits. And this pathway also earns you access to the full benefit amount. And lastly, we have the special pathway for people near retirement. So this is was a newer change to the program added last year. So this pathway, if you were born before 1968, and so near retirement as the program may begins, and unlikely to qualify for the 10-year pathway, you can earn 10% of the full benefit amount for each year that you work. So as an example, if you work and contribute for 500 hours, at least 500 hours per year for 3 years, you'd earn 30% of that benefit amount, which comes out to just under $11,000. That amount, of course, also is adjusted for inflation. So even if you only contribute for 1 year, you would still earn 10% of that benefit amount. And near retirees will have permanent access to whatever percentage of the benefit amount that they earn, and at the time that they need care. Of course, they're also able and eligible to qualify through one of the other pathways if they met those requirements. So let's talk about how we can use the benefit and yeah, the different uses and ways we can use that benefit amount. So once workers meet the contribution requirements and need help with at least 3 activities of daily living, again, they'll have access to the $36,500 budget for different services and supports. So with Walk Cares, workers get the flexibility and also the freedom to choose the services and supports that meet their needs, which, as we can see, can mean many things. Could be in-home or residential care, could also include in-home modifications to make their home safer, right, which is something that has been touched on by the panelists today. Assistive technology for things like medication reminders, fall detection that can help with some care needs. And like we've been mentioning throughout today's webinar, Walk Cares is designed to help people age in place in their homes as long as possible. That's what most of us want to do, and most of us can if we have the right supports in place. And Walk Cares has many options to provide support for family caregivers. So you can choose someone who would otherwise be caring for you on an unpaid basis to get training and be paid, including your spouse. So Walk Cares can help lessen the impact on family caregivers by paying them for their time and making sure that they get other support services as well. All right, and I'm going to skip through this slide again. The slides will be available if you want to take a closer look. These are just some scenarios of how far the benefit would go, and how different ways that you would be able to use the benefit. But for sake of time, I do want to move on to our final slide and then hopefully have at least a few minutes for some questions. So this last slide is really just some great news from the last legislative session of 2024. The legislature passed a new law allowing people to take their Walk Cares benefit with them if they move out of state. So under this new law, starting in July of 2026, Washington workers will be able to choose to continue participating in the Walk Cares Fund if they do move out of the state. So to become an out-of-state participant, workers must have contributed to Walk Cares for at least 3 years, again, working at least 500 hours per year, and must opt in within a year of leaving Washington. And just like other workers, out-of-state participants will keep contributing to the fund during their working years, and the state will create and working on creating a process for out-of-state participants to be able to report their earnings and pay premiums, of course, trying to make it as easy as possible for participants. And benefits will become available for out-of-state participants starting in July of 2030. So that concludes our Walk Cares section. I know we just have a few minutes, but we'll go to our Q&A section next.
Thanks. It looks like a lot of the questions were already answered in chat, but there is a few from Walk Cares, for Walk Cares. Sebastian, will you ever contribute more than the $36,500?
No, so I guess likely no, right? Let me just go back to that slide. I know we kind of went quickly over that one, but we see here some of these sample salary amounts, right? So because the contribution amount is 0.58% of our paycheck, right, a modest amount, then that won't lead to one contributing more than what the benefit amount may be, right, for someone.
And then there's a question about if you're using some of the resources, the housing resources available. I guess maybe Matt or Johnny can answer. Do you have workers or ways for ASL interpreters so that way the deaf and hard of hearing seniors can access resources?
On the service level in Pierce County, yes, we can always bring an interpreter, and we've done that before, to someone that needs that kind of help. Plus, they can do the relay system if they need to, if they have a device to communicate to an relay operator if they call us. And we are trying to build out our ability to have interpretive services at events as well. But if a person needs help, and I've been on those visits myself, we do bring a person that can interpret along to connect with them on programs and services they might need.
Yes, and in that Matthew's agency, we share the same clients. It is the same for us and also with any home and community living client as well.
There is a question about how participant eligibility is determined. Are you able to describe what program you're talking about, or a little bit more information about what your question is about? We will be able to respond to you via email if we weren't able to answer your question live here, through the email that you registered for today's webinar with. So if we don't get to your question, we will email you at the email you provided when you registered. But since we're running out of time, that's all we have for today. You can get some last minute questions in here before it's over, and we'll respond to you via email. The slides are already available on our website. The recording of this webinar will be available by the end of the day today. And we appreciate all of you coming and joining us today, and hope to see you on our next webinar. For June, we have a WACARES Basics for Workers webinar. July, we have a WACARES Basics for Employers webinar. And in August, we have a WACARES Basics for Providers webinar. All three of those basics webinars are available to register for on our website today at wacaresfund.wa.gov/webinars. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you soon.